Dr. Jazz.
I'll just jump in. I mean, I wanted to start this talk with serious fun. I listened to it today, and I kind of went back to 80s Miles era, you know, the Schofield kind of induced melodies. And I really love, you know, I just had a tour with Patrice, the drummer on the record in May.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
and, you know, he's an amazing drummer, but the way he plays on your record, I was like, damn, that's some serious fusion playing. Like, what's the story behind the record? How come you decided to go this way for this one?
Well, actually, the story started with that band started in 2014. We've been invited to a studio up in Ireland,
Mm,
and we just had some days there, and we recorded some material that I prepared, and we did two CDs there. One CD with actually with tunes, so
mm.
to say, and one CD, it's about 15 minutes totally improvised.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so and it's called Now. The CD is called Now. And well, the engineer just pressed the button, and I wasn't in the room. I had still breakfast, and my band, I thought they were warming up, but then they were already recording. So I went in the studio, and it was totally happening,
Mm,
you know, maybe because I wasn't there. So I sat down and I wrote a little melody just like that, you know, for like 5 minutes. So you don't hear any saxophone for the first 10 minutes because I was writing out this. And then I just, you know, the band was still playing, and I passed out this little melody, and everybody was looking at it. And then at a certain moment, I just pointed at the sheet and we played it. And
mm.
it kind of worked great because it was really in the moment and it just happened. And yeah, it was phenomenal. And then we did, you know, I decided to continue that band, and
Mhm.
we play on and off some concerts. And then I wrote new material for that band, and the CD Serious Fun actually is the second CD from that band. And
Mm.
yeah, it just, you know, sometimes you do CDs and they are very conceptual, and
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and my heart is always in two worlds. It's that more jazz kind of atmosphere with free improvisation and sometimes playing tunes and this. And then I always enjoyed playing in a kind of groove
Mhm.
format,
Yeah.
you know. So I said, well, if I enjoy it, I should actually do it, you know. And I've been invited to a lot of bands who perform in this genre
Yeah. Yeah.
as a soloist. So I said, well, I want to do something on my own there, and that's what came out finally,
Mm.
you know. So it's, that Serious Fun CD was a little bit more planned because we play tunes,
Yeah.
actually tunes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's the story behind it, you
Yeah,
know.
how did you write I mean, how do you write music? Like I remember, you know, I mentioned the Abercrombie record, and
Yeah.
there are some beautiful tunes there, like that Green Bridge and Key of the Moment. You've written a lot of music through the years, and also on the new one, this Serious Fun. It's like, you know, this beautiful melodies. What's your process when writing? Do you write on the piano or the horn or?
Um, Actually, I did a CD. I did a recording with it's called Legal Paradiser years ago. I think in
Mm,
2004, 2005, and I wrote this CD. I wrote it. I, you know, made a concept up just on my saxophone. So
mm,
I played the bass lines on the saxophone. I thought maybe this would fit. Maybe then this melody kind of like this to it, and I did some pre-recordings to see if that fits, because on the saxophone you just have one note at a time, so you need to see how that works out. But that's mostly written only on the saxophone, which I think was a good experience for me, because before that I was sitting down at the piano, and I play the piano, but it's not my first instrument. So it's the saxophone. So what I realized is your composing and your ideas, they are really a little limited on the piano. They are more limited on the piano because I have limitations on the piano, So realizing that, I tried to work on my harmonic picture, which I did really a lot, just to get ideas. And sometimes you play something and then you make a mistake, and all of a sudden the so-called mistake,
that's the best,
leads you to something, because it's just so good to make a mistake, because all of a sudden that's fresh, So this is a process. And you mentioned the Key of the Moment record, the very first record that I did. I was writing mostly on the piano, because at that time, I wasn't that experienced. And I thought, like, okay, I need to watch it on the keyboard, how it works. And this is the harmonic knowledge that I have, blah, 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 all this. And then this record, Dave Liebman helped me to produce it. So I remember him sitting at the piano and me on my horn, and we went through the tunes that we are going to record. So this was a great help, because he said, well, you should do this and you should do this. And I said, man, he knows, he just knows so much, and through his experience, I mean, how many times has he heard a G minor chord? So he knows, he knows how to make that interesting. And this helped a lot, because I thought, like, after this session, preparing the record, maybe 2 weeks before we went in the studio, I said, I feel like I'm not ready, because now my head is so full of ideas. I should have another year and then do the record. But then I realized you're never ready anyhow. So it's the key of it's the moment, that's a reflection of the moment. That's also, I think the title fits pretty well. And
what was your story with Liebman? How did you connect with him?
Well, when I was very young, I went in Germany. We had these Ebersold camps in the middle of the 80s, and a lot of great musicians like Mike Stern, Adam Nussbaum. I met him the first time there, and Liebman, and Ron McClure, Richie Bayrak. They were all part of this teaching team from the Ebersold workshops, and that's how I met him, actually. And then we kind of always stayed in touch very loosely, and it was very inspiring, certainly at that age. And it went on, and that it led to that record, which I thought, maybe, am I ready for this? But as I said, it was a big chance, and that was what I was up to at the moment. So, and from then on, the journey, of course, continued, and also my writing changed.
Of course.
And also the way I think about concepts in music. If you just take the record Serious Fun, it's a total different concept than if you say, like, let's make a more open and balladesque record. Of course you have to think completely different. So, but I think I can manage that pretty well. And most of the tunes, they come up, I also change the way I let's say play, or if you name it, practice. I
Yeah.
don't really like this word, but the English meaning of practice means something else than if we in Germany we say üben,
Even, yeah.
which is always something like, okay, you have to do it because there is a thing that you can't do. So there is a little bad connotation, if you want bad, connotation to it. Practice means more like just do it.
Yeah.
I practice this, which means like, hey, you just do it. So I play every morning. I play just a little improvisation, or I play a tune, or I play, something. Just start the day with music. Boom. And that leads me to the topic of the day.
Yeah.
And then I go from there. And some days I hear a groove, and maybe at the end of the day, or at the end of the next day, the tomorrow, I have a tune.
Yeah.
But in summer I usually take like 3 or 4 weeks off, and I always have a plan. I write a tune every day.
Yeah, that's a good tactic. Yep.
I
Yep.
want to write a tune every day, and sometimes the tunes are okay, and sometimes you forget them immediately.
Yeah.
Because they're not working, something doesn't happen, and
Totally.
yeah, it is what it is. But you have to accept it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I try to write as much as I can, and like sometimes I question myself. You write another rubato melody, and it's like, yeah, it's nice, but is it good? I always value, try to, then you have like 30 rubato melodies. Like, which one is the best? I'm always like, shit, do I need that or not? Or is it just an exercise, or what is it? Or,
Yeah, and I have to say that I have certain, when I write, I have certain stages that I go through. So sometimes I'm sitting at the piano nowadays. I'm still not as good on the piano as I'm on the saxophone, okay? So, but I'm sitting there, and I'm just playing maybe through a standard or something, and then I'm getting an idea, and then maybe I just do a little arrangement of the standard. Sometimes that's also okay. Or I'm getting an idea, and then I play it on the piano, and then I work on this idea, and maybe I have 4 bars, and then maybe I said, well, I have to be done. I want to have a whole tune in the evening. So how do I continue? And then there's certain techniques, of course, and if you know them, you're better because you can check them out. And then when I think the tune is ready, I know that I've conceptualized that tune on the piano. So I take my saxophone and I try to run it on the saxophone. And usually what happens is I have to change the melody on certain spots, because I'm so used to the saxophone that, sometimes the melodic part is different on the saxophone for me than on the piano. I mean, and it's, yeah, and then I change the melody, and then I go back to the piano, so it's like going back and forth, and in the end, yeah, maybe there is something that I can use. And then there's the last stage, is bring the tune to the band.
Yeah.
And then because most of the time the band members, they have great suggestions, and I think that's a very important thing. If you compose, it's stay open, to criticism, or to be ready to change it.
Yep.
Even if it's something you really liked, and if it just doesn't work, so change it.
Yep.
And I'm very fortunate to have musicians around me who are good and delicate in saying, hey, there's just this one note, or if you pace it different, if you change the rhythm, or just another chord, or something very light. It really changes the atmosphere, and I enjoy this very much.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last stage is playing it for people and see if you touch people with it, with
Yeah.
your dream composition, and hopefully you touch it. Or sometimes it doesn't work the way you want, but you like it. Yeah, then
Yeah.
play
It's
it.
like yeah.
Yeah, but this is how it is.
Yeah. It's a funny process. Yeah. Composing and playing.
Yeah,
I remember sometimes like writing a whole tune and then like just keeping maybe 4 bars and like, okay, that's it. The bridge at home, like you write, oh man, shit, this sounds amazing. Then you play it with the band, it's like, oh fuck, man, that's terrible. It's like, let's skip.
yeah, exactly.
It's funny. Yeah.
And there's also this thing that I do sometimes, that I'm just playing, like I said, in the morning, and I just, with all those mobile phones, they are like recording
Yeah. That's
devices,
perfect.
so I just switch it on and I'm improvising, and then it shouldn't be too long, because you're not going to listen for half an hour back what you just did. But if you take like 5 minutes, and then when you have your coffee, you just listen back to it, and maybe there is like
Yeah.
20 seconds that you really like. So you say, hey, let's transcribe this, and let's see if I can work on this, because it feels so natural, because you improvised it on your
Yeah.
own.
Exactly.
So I'm into that pretty much, to just put a recording device, switch it on, and just play, and
It's
see what
less
you get.
rational. I mean, when we compose,
Yeah,
we are so rational. At least not many times.
exactly. So this is more and more, and this happens also on Serious Fun a lot, that I was just playing, and then I said, oh, I have this little melody line that I like. Let's see if I can find some chords. Let's see if I can, let's see how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. That's a good process. Yeah, many people do that. I mean, that's
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. You mentioned the Abersold camps in the 80s. Uh, when did you have like a aha moment that like, shit, I want to play jazz? Did you hear a specific musician or record? Do you remember that?
Actually, that happened before that. It wasn't. I started out on clarinet,
Okay.
and when I was very young, I think I was 8 or 9. And before I learned the piano, I mean, there was always music in our house. So with my parents, and you know, and so I started clarinet, and only classical music. I think that's the most normal thing, how
Yeah.
you learn the instrument. And that, in order to get the lessons took place in a room in a school, just for kids. And in order to go to the clarinet lesson, I had to pass by a room where there was a big band rehearsing,
Okay.
and so I don't remember it. Let's say, I'm making this up. Tuesday afternoon at 5 o'clock, I had my lesson up from 5 to 6. And it's when I went out of this lesson, I always passed by this hall, and I heard this big band, and I thought, like, man, it's totally happening. So let's see what's going on. So I went in that room, and there was a school teacher. His name was Jochen Arp, in Hamburg, where I grew up, and he was conducting the band. And so I came there with my clarinet, and I listened, and then I think we started to talk, and this is so thrilling. Can I join? I said, yeah, sure, come by. So I took my lesson, and then I dropped by with the clarinet, and I enjoyed it very much. But I also learned that, clarinet, maybe in the big band, you need, the saxophone is the thing, So at the age of 13, 14, my father made a huge present for me, which was a tenor saxophone. And yeah, from that moment on, I went to that big band, and the leader, this guy Johan Arp, I mention his name because we always have, of course, our big heroes,
Yeah.
the great musicians known all over the world. But the initial moment to start your musical career sometimes are those people who really take care of you and who are not that known, but
Yeah.
they put the seed in you that you start to do what you want to do. So, and I remember on one of those rehearsals, he gave me a tape, and I think I still have it. And on this tape, there was, Salt Peanuts, Charlie Parker, All the Things You Are, Charlie Parker. He made a mix, 3 Charlie Parker tunes. Then there was Saxophone Colossus, Sonny Rollins, and there was a little Coltrane, and, Lester Young, Shoeshine Boy, the solo of Shoeshine Boy, and Lady Be Good. I remember that. And I said, hey, this is the saxophone. My father just bought me one. I sound so poor. So this is how the cats sound. Like, what do I have to do to get there? I mean, this was so ridiculous. And I was thrilled, And yeah, at that time, I think I watched a movie during Christmas. They were playing this movie on German television, which was called The Benny Goodman Story, which is, I just remember parts of it, but you see the band, Gene Kruber is playing on that movie, but what I had in mind, what kept him, you see scenes where he just continuously practiced, and sometimes he practiced on the roof of the apartment building in New York, So I remember this because I discovered, for me, well, if you really want to sound like Sonny Rollins, and maybe, if you want to get into that world, you just have to do it like all the time. Just, because in that movie it was like this, so let's go. And I played a lot, I have to say. And I was raised at the 8th floor of a little of a huge building. And I remember that my mother, she had to be very polite to all the neighbors, just down to the 4th floor, because whenever I played, everybody could hear it, Yeah, but, so this, at that time when I was 13, 14, I decided to go more into the music field. Maybe it was a conscious decision or not, but I remember this tape that I was listening to always. And that was a moment, hey, I really want to at least figure out what this is. And it was fascinating for me. And then I got more serious, because then this big band leader, Johan Arp, he introduced me to Herb Geller. And Herb Geller was a famous alto saxophone player who was the lead alto saxophone player in the NDR, North German broadcast service, in the big band, in the NDR big band. So I met him a couple of times, and he really he said, hey, you need to practice technique a little bit. You need to do this and this and blah, blah, blah. So I went there, and then I went to those, and then came the episode workshop.
Okay.
So, but I was a little prepared, but to be honest, not up to the level that I saw there.
Sure.
Those episode workshops, because everybody was going there. I still know musicians from that period, and we all met in those camps. And then you hear, if people are warming up, I remember some saxophone players, they were warming up against the wall, I said, like, oh my God, and what am I going to do here? And that was the moment I'm listening to all the different players, listening to what all those great artist teachers had to say. That's when I decided, yeah, I mean,
That's the
it's
path.
so
Yeah.
serious, and that's going to be something for me too. And I want to know what this is about.
Yeah, it's like a disease always, this jazz thing. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
become obsessed then, and we just
Yeah.
it's bizarre, but it's true. Yeah, everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And then, yeah. So this was just briefly the beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. How did then? How did that? I mean, we mentioned Liebman, and he being the producer. How did then you met Adam Nussbaum in Abersold workshop? If he still remembered you then on when you did Key of the Moment, but like how did you gather that band? I mean, Rufus is amazing on bass, and me being a guitarist, I'm a huge fan of Abercrombie. Like, how was the vibe there, and why those musicians? Did Liebman help you, or?
Yes, he
Oh,
helped. He
okay.
said, "Lay, yeah, maybe you should. What do you think? Listen to this guy and listen to that person and listen here and listen there. And I would recommend you this,
Hmm.
but listen, So and then, yeah, he said, I think for you this would be very cool, and a great experience. And at that time, I remember then I went to New York, and Rufus Reed was picking me up in his huge car. He had this huge car, and I thought, wow, man, this is really I mean, Rufus, he played with Stan Getz, he
Yeah,
played
yeah, with
with
everyone. Yeah.
I mean, just with everybody, and so did Adam Nussbaum. He played with Stan Getz too, which I didn't know at that time. But so there was a lot of music history going on around me, and I wasn't even really aware of it, and that came in later. And so Dave helped me a lot to set this up,
Hmm, okay.
because I wouldn't have maybe the courage or the to call those people, and but when we met in the studio, then I remember they said, yeah, I remember you from the episode camps, and yeah, I remember you too, and so it was a very nice atmosphere, I have to say. They took off a lot of stress,
Yeah, it's important.
of me. So, and also maybe that was due to their personalities, they made it very easy for me. I mean, easy, so, but that's also maybe why Dave chose those musicians, because, they can
Right.
create a vibe around to make me feel cool. I'm sure a lot of others can do the same, but that was the moment,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
it was really very nice, I have to say.
Was it easy for you to become a band leader? I mean, like, if you look back now, like almost 30 years, how have you developed in that aspect? I mean, in the beginning, was it natural, or was there a lot of pressure on you? Like,
No, I mean, you learn step by step, I think,
yeah,
and there is also a lot of moments where you aren't aware of the psychological framework
yeah,
of finesse in certain situations, So, in the early days, for me, sometimes maybe I'm sure I was sometimes also too hard on some people, you know. And luckily, we could talk about this later, But this is things you just don't know.
yeah,
And then a lot of things are you learn just by watching how people do it,
yeah,
and still receive their goals, So if they want to have the music go in this direction, then how do you do it? How do you continue? You just tell them, hey, don't play this or don't do this, and that's a very rude way, and especially if you say, hey, let's try this, because I need to change my playing.
Yep.
you know, put it more on you and transfer this to the others in a nice way. I mean, this is what I think, this is what you learn. And that is, you know, it's good. You know, I mean, it really helped me a lot. And just by watching, I was fortunate enough to play with a lot of different artists, and they all have their own unique ways. You know, some people talk a lot, some people don't talk at all. That you just see like little gestures or through eye contact that either they like what you do, or that you have the feeling inside you have to change something because it's maybe not how they hear it.
Hmm.
So it's to be open and sensible to all those kind of things, you know. And then you realize also you are in a lot of situations where you have a band leader and he tries to say something, and you feel like that other musicians in the band are not that sensible, and then you develop a kind of, hey, let's get this and let's balance this out, and we all like each other, but we need to balance this, you know. So it's very nice, and I think everything is based on experience. I mean, you just need to do it a lot, and you need to love it, and it needs to come from your heart. It needs to be honest, and all this comes in, you know. If you try to be to play something that isn't you, then I think you can, you know, music, you cannot hide anything in music.
Yep.
It's just impossible. So, and I think you feel it, and even a non-trained listener, he feels that something, wait a minute, there's, you know, he cannot put it, or she cannot put it in words, but there is something that's maybe not cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, and this is just experience, and you know, and it's also the feeling that you know, there's certain things that you can control in music, you know, and if you do everything and do everything, practice and work on those things that you can control, like harmony, you know, like music, you know, then I think that's great. And there's things that are out of your control. You cannot control them. So it's very hard to work on these things, you know. But the more you work on the things that you can control, like your compositions, the way you do it, the way it sounds natural, your playing, your sound, your being around with other musicians, the way you lead a band, the tunes you pick, you know, everything like that, how to make up a program that's nice, that, you know, musicians trust you if you put a set together, that it works, and all this. This is experience, and this is work on the things you can control, you know. And the more you do this, I think the more, if you know that, hey, I can do this, and I can do this, and I may be able to do this up to that level, it makes you feel safe also in certain situations. And then that, you know, that reflects to other musicians and to other people as well, you know.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's like, it's funny because in jazz especially, I think, like you said, we learn through experience. No one tells you, you know, what the fees are, or, you know, if you book a band, like, do you request a dinner and you know, 3 single rooms for a trio or stuff like that. It's like, you know, when students go to universities, they don't know this. There's not a,
and that is sometimes
you know,
important, you know.
Oh, that's the most
because if
important,
you're on tour, you put the band together, you're sure, hey, the music is going to happen.
Yeah.
But what actually makes the music also sound better is if the surroundings are
Food.
cool, because it puts you up, it levels you up, it gives you a certain value,
Yeah.
and that's what you want, you know. So, and then all of a sudden you have a certain value to your music or to the music that you are playing. You have a decent dinner, and this is also I did a record with Jeff Hamilton, and
Yeah.
I'm not, and later I invited him for a workshop. So I'm not sure if he said it to me or on the workshop, but I remember it. He said, treat yourself nice. It's like, at least when you're on tour, have one great meal per day.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, not just some junk food, let's say, I'm not against it. Some people like it too, but treat yourself nice, whatever that means, and also travel nice, because traveling, it's so much time,
Yeah.
and also if you have a good way to travel, if you found your way that it's not too exhausting for you, and have this good meal with maybe a nice glass of wine, and but it does something good to you,
True.
and then you know why you do the things, you know
Yeah.
so it's not about F or F sharp. Sometimes there's a
Oh
whole
man.
another thing to it.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, it's funny. But yeah, like you said, you learn these things through doing it,
Yeah. And it's
and
funny because
trial and
you
error.
always have people who talk to you about it, and then you say, yeah, that's true. And those people, they heard it from somebody,
Exactly.
so it's a thing that goes on.
Yeah, that's a nice thing about jazz, this oral,
Yeah.
unwritten tradition somehow. There are books, but there are no books at the same time.
Yeah.
It's like you have to do it. You have to screw up, and yeah, then you're like,
Yeah,
oh
and
shit,
sometimes
okay.
you also have to break certain rules for
Yeah,
you,
yeah,
and then something new comes out. So it's all cool.
exactly. Yeah. Uh, Peter, you said, we started this talk with serious fun, which
Yeah.
is groovy oriented, and you said you played with many groove oriented bands, and I have one CD with Maceo Parker and yourself, and there's like Ron Tooley and all those monster players on the brass section there. What's your story with Maceo? How did that begin?
Well, I studied in Cologne, and I met a wonderful musician, keyboard and piano player, Joachim Becker. And we played in the Cologne big band, led by Michael Wilmo at that time in Cologne. And we did a tour, and there's some common stories. And he became a label manager. And he was producing very fine records, with Joe Zawinul,
Hmm.
and he also, he also produced a record with Maceo Parker. And for some reason, there was a tenor player missing. And he called and he said, "Hey, can you be in the studio with Maceo, because we're doing this and this and this?" And I said, "Of course." So um, I came there, and it was a trip. It was a trip because first of all, they were so nice, and Maceo was so nice and beautiful. I'll never forget this. And I learned so much. I learned that he's a huge Cannonball Adderley fan,
Mm,
you know, and he knows parts of the solos by heart from Cannonball. So, but he found his own style in
yeah,
that groove-orientated music. And then the way they played it, and the way they put all these things together, it's so fresh, it's so natural, it's always singable.
yeah,
Every line you can sing, either it's the bass line or the second trombone or whatever. So it's really, that was another experience, the way they were doing this, and it was just great. So this Joachim Becker, through him,
mm,
I became a little part of this. And then we met was it Romania? I think we met at a festival where I was playing with my group, and then Maceo was playing with his group. So the other day he invited me on stage, so we played a little bit. It was just very nice, very, very, very. You know, you felt immediately like this is like a family, the whole band, because they are touring so much. You know, many concerts, and they welcome you, and it was just very nice, very nice.
Beautiful. Well, what about the Billy Cobham experience on the other side?
This is kind of the same. I think it was a guitar player that's Frank Nimsgern was a guitar player, and he's still around. You know, when Facebook, we exchanged some words. Hey, do you remember the times? Yeah. I think he's very successful in writing music for musicals now.
I don't know him. Have to check.
You know, and I think he had this band, and he had Billy Cobham.
Oh wow!
He invited him, and then he invited me to that band. So that's how we met. And then I was playing with my band at the Frankfurt Music Fair, and we had this little booth, and we, you know, at that time I was with Yamaha saxophone, so I was playing at the stand of Yamaha in that booth, and finishing this, there's this guy standing in the door, and it was Billy Cobham. So that's how I met him again. And then, you know, another friend in Cologne was putting a concert together with me and Sebastian Stutnitsky and some people, and we played with, and Billy Cobham was the guest star, you know, so we played in Cologne. So I met him a couple of times, but it was always very nice. So that's the story with this.
Interesting. You know? Yeah, interesting. What's still on the schedule for you for this year and the upcoming months? I mean, have you been preparing like a new record also that's coming out?
I mean, I'm constantly, as I said, I'm constantly writing. I'm writing every day, and some of it stays, some of it doesn't. Some ideas remain in books that I might come up with 10 years later, you know.
Yeah.
And but I'm going to play as a guest with a big band. I am doing a workshop, and then I'm, you know, that's in the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going with a friend, Florian Ross, a great piano player. He put a quartet together, and we play in southern Germany. Then I move quickly up. Then I have to go to Poland because somebody wrote with something with strings and soprano, trumpet, and tenor saxophone. So I'm taking the saxophone part, and then so there's always something going on. And I play with my funk band, Serious Fun. I play in November, and I'm
busy.
Try to put things together. And you know, sometimes it's hard to get gigs, as we all know.
After COVID, it's gotten
it's tougher and tougher, but that's the way it is, and it's not worth complaining.
No, exactly. Yeah,
it doesn't lead you anywhere. But just do what you do and do it the best. You know, just try to control the things you can control. So, and then we go from there. You know, and see what happens. And usually something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And even, you know, like yesterday with friends, we had a great session for 1.5 hours. We just met and we just played, you know, and that's, it doesn't need to always be a concert or recording date. You know? I mean, let's just get together and do something.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir.
Did I say something nasty?
Yeah, everything was bad.
Oh, shit.
Not fantastic. Thanks for sharing some of these thoughts, man. I appreciate it. So beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this and for inviting me, having me in mind, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I usually go by records. That's why, you know, when I check the list of players, it's so diverse from kind of, you know, avant-garde, modern to fusion to straight ahead. I just usually like take an album and I put it on. I play with my daughter in the morning. Oh shit, man, that's really cool again. revisit records. I'm like, oh,
Oh yeah. So
let's
it's
email
nice.
Peter, like, or whoever, Rufus Reed. Like, okay, let's. And
Oh yeah.
the most people are like, oh yeah, let's do it. It's relaxed and it's fun. So it's.
I think with Rufus, I mean, he picked me up to take me to the studio like 31 years ago. And then, somebody called Rufus Reed, and I was in the room 25 years later. And I said, man, I recorded it. Let me pick up, give me the phone, And so I said, Mr. Reed, this is Peter Weniger. Do you remember me? And he said, yes, we did this record. How are you doing? I mean, it was so nice. It felt like we met yesterday, the last time, but there was 20 years in between.
He's a gentleman.
Really funny, really, really great.
Yeah.
Yeah.